Jay, I just have a random question. Where are you going to put the new flagpole?
Yeah, hopefully next to one of the other ones. Excited about that. Really looking forward to the celebration. I think it's the weekend of November 11th, where the players will get their rings. We'll have the plaque stone out there, which is really awesome. And then flag will be either there opening day. Odd number, I guess, now is 7. So I'll leave that to the smarter people to figure all that. Great problems to have.
Specifically, what are you trying to accomplish in this over the last? Well, have you tried to accomplish over the last month or two in this sort of odd period before you get into fall practice?
Yeah, in the 8-hour weeks, 4 hours of strength and conditioning. So we've done a lot of work on guys' bodies. Coach Jeremy McMillan. Really happy to have him on board. I think he's the best strength coach in college baseball. I've believed that for several years, and really thankful that we have him at LSU. So a lot of player assessments relative to their strengths and weaknesses, their body, how they move, how that translates into developing ground force, rotational force to move the bat, to move in the field, to move through their pitching delivery. So he's had a big hand in that part of it. Got a lot of guys like we're nursing some injuries. So Isaac Trujillo, our trainer, has been really important in that 4-hour phase too. As far as the on the field stuff, building a foundation. I like doing fall practice later for several reasons. The team portion, that is, gives the pitcher 7 weeks. They've essentially had 7 weeks to build up their arms, develop a good foundation with Coach Yeski. He has done an excellent job of giving them individual attention. The bullpen sessions are 2 guys at a time. So it's essentially like every guy on our staff is getting an individual pitching lesson, during those times. He's done a lot of really good mental game work, with them in terms of stuff in the classroom. On the position player side of it, it's about building a foundation. We have a system. We go incredibly slow with that system. Like, we'll scrimmage tomorrow night. We're nowhere near ready to play and win a game tomorrow night. It's been a lot of individual fundamentals, whether that's been individual defense, with the infielders. It's been, establishing our hitting foundation, which most of that is individual player mechanics, things of that nature. We just kind of started this week on, starting to build some things that you do in a game to win. And so we'll do that over the next, 6.5 weeks of slowly put it all together. And, I like to get through the fall with 50% done what we want to, but being 100% good at the 50% we're doing. So it's kind of the old cut it in half and try to master it theory. So different approach, but it's one that we feel comfortable about. There's a lot of new players on the position player side of the ball, so you probably see us go a little slower than usual.
Who's
out? Tommy will not play this fall. He had a shoulder procedure shortly after the College World Series that was probably needed well into the year, but got it fixed up good. He'll be 100% ready to go, by when we start back up in January. He's moving around, doing a great job with his therapy. Body looks great. So really pleased with, coming off of a shoulder repair, that he's in a good spot physically. Super motivated, obviously, for the year. And, we just won't have the luxury of seeing him hit a bunch of line drives in fall practice. So good news for our pitchers, developing confidence. Brady and Alex are on their way back to returning. They will both catch a little bit this weekend. They will not hit yet. They're probably both a couple weeks away from taking at-bats in games. We've had a kind of a flu bug, if you will, or sickness kind of rolling through our team. So there's be some guys that need to reestablish they can practice before we'll let them play in a scrimmage. So specifically to tomorrow, it will be a very skeleton crew, on the field of what we have, which is okay. It's opportunities for other guys to get more reps and those types of things. And I'm, kind of looking forward to it. But, our full complement, I don't think we'll really see that, through this entire fall, just based on where we're at pitching-wise. Feel very good about where we are as far as a health-wise at this point in time. Obviously, Chase Shores and Jaden Newt are on their way back. Real positive today where that lands, when they would be able to return. I don't have a time frame on that, but both are doing a great job physically with what they can control, and are super motivated to get back, which would be a big lift for us if that could take place sometime during this season.
Did you ever figure out what Brady's deal was?
Yeah, it's just a back, rotational, type issue, which is why he's catching now. But, we're in our hitting progression. He's handled the first 5 days of that, really, really well. And obviously, I'm itching to get him back on the field because we need the reps to get him better. I mean, he could be a great player. I really believe that. To be pretty much the starter on a national championship team as a freshman, you have to have something to you. We think he has something to you now. We want to get him that next step offensively. Kind of something I've laid out for him is like, can we get him, Cade Beloso type at bats? If he does that with being a catcher, he's looking at a really good situation for himself in terms of the draft in 2025. But we got to get him back on the field and healthy so we can start moving towards that.
Well, last month or two, who has really, taken this last month or two and really sort of stepped up and improved and impressed you?
That's a tough question to answer just from a standpoint of they haven't been challenged with anything yet. A couple that that are easy in terms of what we're seeing on the pitching side. Aiden Moffitt, which we believed that he could. His summer was very valuable. He went up to the lacrosse loggers in the Northwoods League, which has always been like one of my staple places. A lot of guys playing in the major leagues right now that, played in lacrosse their freshman year, after their freshman year, and Aiden is really improved. I got to watch a couple outings on live stream. The talent is obviously there. We'll see as the games start and all that, but he's in terrific shape. He looks really athletic. His body is in a good spot. So I'm proud of the direction he's heading on the position player side of it. Ethan Fry is probably the one that stands out the most right now. And again, nobody's been real tested with anything. But in terms of what we're seeing, those two guys are probably the ones that come to mind first.
Just kind of building on that, the year 1 to year 2 development for a lot of those guys, it's obviously something you're banking heavily on this year.
Yeah.
Just what do you hope to see from that group? The Paxtons, the Bradys, the Gavin Guidrys, in terms of what he's going to do on the infield. Just what is kind of the next step, I guess, for that group?
Well, yeah, and I've talked about this. I talked about it a lot last year because it was our second year. The biggest strides I've had players make are between year 1 and year 2, whether when our coaching staff showed up in year 1 to year 2, or the player from the freshman to the sophomore year. And I mean, you headlined it. Last year, I would say we had a perfect scenario where you either had high floor, high experience, or high ceiling, high talent, and low experience, where now the answer for this team is the improvement of the returning players. We have some really good new players, and I'm excited about those guys. But, Paxton, Jared, Brady, Gavin, those guys taking a step forward is at the top of the list as far as what, we need to do, with this fall and help prepare them for the season. And it's very intentional. There's mental parts of that, or whatever you want to call it. Not characters, not the right word, but mental game parts of that. And then there's some baseball skill parts. I mentioned, with Brady, like I'd like him to see him evolve into a Cade Beloso type at bat. With Jared, who hit 15 home runs and hit 300 in the SEC last year. So, I mean, I think you got Petrie at South Carolina, Kurland at Florida. I mean, you can make an argument that Jared, even though he wasn't starting at the end, was one of the top 3 or 4 freshmen in the SEC. Just taking, just a little higher level at bat when the ball doesn't go over the fence. Kind of like we talked about with Braden Jobert. And I'm using those as examples because I think those older guys gave those guys some real solid emulation of where we want to take that next step. With Paxton, he's an elite defensive outfielder, terrific speed. We saw really good flashes. I think he hit about 290, 297 in 100 at-bats last year. And again, to get 100 at-bats as a freshman on that team, that tells you what we think he can be. He just needs to play. You'll see him hit 1, 2, or 3 in every inter squad for the entire fall. Very much the same with Jared, very much the same with Ethan, to accelerate those guys' development.
Do you does your message or does the motivation change coming off a championship season like this for this team, or are you always looking every year to change things a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I think there's different things that this team will need to do different than last year's team, relative to maybe motivation or approach. We can emulate some things that were really positive about that group. With this group, we've really kind of squashed the notion of we're not defending, we're not repeating. This is a completely different team. And, something that we've talked a lot about is it's very human nature, to maybe relax or pull back when you've won or you've been successful. And, in the 10 minutes I have every once in a while, I was watching that show on the Lakers on HBO, which was mostly not very good. But the character of Pat Riley was really good. And there was this scene where he was talking about the difference between wanting to win, and loving basketball. And he's like, these guys want to win and they love basketball. But after their second championship, he felt like they lost, like they have to win, they needed to win. And then when Larry Bird beat them in the 1984 finals, that changed it. And then they won 3 of the next 4 because they kind of got back to hey, this is in our DNA. This made Magic and Kareem and all those guys special. And it was in the 1984 season they lost that. So, I mean, I can tell you that. And this is a new thing for a lot of guys. I mean, I think in the lineup that last night, 6 of those guys obviously moved on, to professional baseball or graduated. So it's not even the same team. So I do think you have to look at it a little bit differently, and we want to look at it a little bit differently. And, we've thrown out some challenges to some of the returning players, the guys that have been here for a few years. They could leave here as one of the most successful classes in LSU baseball in a long time. And that's saying a lot with the amount of success that's been had around here. But they could do that, and I think they're excited to go for that. And I think, emulating some of those positive things that we've seen, we had really strong player leadership last year. And there's some guys that are really trying, to push that forward. And I'm really happy to see that.
When you have a new pitching coach for every year for the last 3 years, from the outside looking in, some might think that is something. But with the portal and the addition of new players, does that really kind of mitigate any of those concerns that you would have?
Yeah, it is something. It means a lot of good things are happening here. It means we're winning a lot, and people are getting promoted, which I'm always for. I had a good conversation with Scott Woodward, kind of about this. And, he was like, it's something you're going to deal with, here. He's like, you just obviously want to make sure you never want to run out of talent, and that sort of thing. Well, we have not done that. I mean, you mentioned how we're approaching the fall. There's a lot of new on the coaching staff side of it too. So we are not taking anything for granted in terms of how we set up every day. The advantage I have with Coach Yeski is we were together for 2 years. And so the comfortability, if you will, of knowing what's taking place with those guys, how it's taking place, what the end product, is going to look like, especially with the talent that we have on that side of the ball, which I am really excited about. That's a really good thing for us. That in this case, it is the third pitching coach in 3 years, but it's somebody that's really highly qualified that there's some familiarity with. And that's a real positive thing. But, that's just something we're going to deal with here. I hope we continue to deal with it here because I want people that think, coaches that have been around this program, this environment, this process, that they're highly qualified to move on and improve somebody else's program. And I have no doubt that, the 3 assistant coaches that are now Power 5 head coaches, those programs are going to be in really good shape.
Just because we haven't seen him play day to day, what's kind of the skill set of Mac? What's the upside,
Yeah.
and where does he fit in competition-wise?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the upside is kind of like I just mentioned with Coach Yeski, really having a solid understanding of what we were going to get. The first year he played for us was COVID, but he was off to a great start, playing on a team that was very good. And then his sophomore year or second year, he was batting third and playing left field on an Omaha team. And he got hurt in like the second to last weekend of the season and broke his hamate bone. And then, has the right kind of toughness. He got back with an injury they had no business coming back from, and was playing defense in the postseason and pinch running in the College World Series. And so there's that character toughness factor. And it's just a really good player. It's a combination of speed, power, solid hitting skills. I think as we get further into developing how we're going to operate as a team, and I've already seen this, especially even within the last week, he'll be further along than most players, that we have. And I like to think we're constantly getting better at what we do, but, his familiarity with that, and he's evolved and developed into a really good player. We got lucky, he didn't sign a pro contract. And, I'm very thankful to have him. As far as what else I think he brings tremendous experience, maturity, which that's so important, with what we're doing. This is not easy, when you're playing at, more than half of our league schedule is going to be against a top 15, team in the preseason. So, you got to have guys that handle success well and move forward, that handle failure well and move forward. And he has a really good idea and sense of who he is as a player, what he needs to put in on a daily basis, and the skill set. When you put those things together, you get a lot of production. And so that was a big add for our team in a lot of ways.
Timeline for facility changes that's coming up? Anything that's
Yeah, I know there's a lot of want to and hope. The immediate is, we won a national championship, so we're going to rebrand, a lot of things around here, and which is great. For me, it all goes back to player development. How can we, improve the product of what we have for the players to develop to become the best players that they can be. What I want to build a new indoor hitting center with an indoor infield for when we have rain days, we don't miss a beat. That, for me, that's number one. Turn the existing cages into a full pitching lab. I believe we're working hard to try to get people, behind that project. I think it's one that won't take a long time to turn around, but we got to get the money to do it. And in college athletics, that's a hard thing, right now. So we'll keep trying and keep trying to put, as I promised, a product out here that everybody in this state can easily get behind. Doesn't mean winning the national championship, but for 2 years, if you watch our team compete and value winning and the effort they put into it, I think that's an easy thing to get behind, and hopefully more people will do that.
You talked about being excited about the staff. Is it an influx of new that's kind of got you so jazzed?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a grouping of things. I think the guys that took a step forward as the season moved along last year, Thatcher, outside of, Paul, right along with Ty Floyd, became our most important pitcher. He won the national championship game, pitched 3 times in Omaha, had the most important performance of the season against Oregon State, in the winner's bracket game of the regional, finished great in the SEC tournament, Georgia. So you feel good about his improvement. The guys that got experience in the College World Series, Griffin Herring, Nate Ackenhausen, Gavin Guidry. So you have a good core there that got experience at the highest level. You can't put a price on that. That is so important. And then, with some volume going out, it's 200 plus innings, between Paul and Ty that walked out the door. It's 63 innings and high leverage, with Riley Cooper. So we knew we had to replace some of that. I'm really pleased with getting, Luke Holman, it's not every day you get to add a SEC starting pitcher, but one of the top 5 or 6 starting pitchers in the SEC. So, that's an awesome add for us. Gage Jump, I think he's going to be as valuable as anybody. He's a super competitor. Obviously left-handed, hides his ball well, big breaking ball. He's just coming back off Tommy John. So you'll see parts of him. Like you're not going to pitch the first couple weeks of inter squads because we're doing his build up properly. My hope is by the end of the fall you'll see him in some games and doing some things, but we're really setting him up, lining him up for February. I think he'll be as important as anybody on our pitching staff. Justin Lohr is a tough angled lefty from Xavier, and then freshmen, Cameron Johnson, Jake Brown, and Cade Anderson. Like that's hard to do in 1 year to get 3 really good lefties like that. Fidel Ulloa, JC right-hander. So there's depth, there's different looks, pitchability, strikes, toughness. Like I'm excited about the whole thing. I mean, this has been like a everyday effort to get this, put together like that. So you can win scoring 6 or 7 instead of having to score 10 or 12.
Maybe a couple more for Jay.
Just with Guidry, I mean, now that you've had him for a month and just kind of talking through things, do you expect to see him much in the infield this fall, or what's kind of the update, I guess, there with him?
Yeah, he has a small injury to his foot, so I don't really know what that looks like in the immediate. He's got a lot in front of him as far as how hard he's working. He's such a good athlete and such a good competitor. You never bet against that. It's just a tough load to be a two-way player. And, same with Jake Brown. I really want Jake Brown to be a two-way player because I think, he can definitely impact on both sides of the ball. So, with Gavin, we know what we have on the mound. We're in a better spot to where we're conditioning his arm properly as a pitcher. Even though he probably won't pitch a whole lot, in the fall, which allows us time to work on this. I mean, he's fast, handles the bat well. Obviously, playing at Barb, he was a well-coached player in high school. But getting those at bats and experience underneath him will be important to see what we have. And I think that's to be determined. But he's a competitor and an athlete, so you like that.
Coach, how do y'all figure that you're going to split up the catching duties because you all got a lot of depth at catching? So how do y'all plan on doing
Yeah, really happy about that. I think we're so far away from the season to even elaborate on that. I trust all 3 of those guys, and obviously still having Jared and Ethan, I think are impact hitters. So they'll probably catch the least of that group just to maintain what they can do for the offense. All of Alex and Brady and Hayden, I mean, we won with all of them, so I'm comfortable with all of them. I think the fact that, Hayden is probably one of our hitters that impacts the ball the best. I'm sure there's some DH at bats in there. You love Alex's experience, winnability. I mean, Brady was playing better than both of them, at the beginning of the year last year. So I'm not worried about it. I think the fact that we have to manage all of their bodies, like that's been proven, like all of them have been hurt. It's good that we have all of them. We're not going to have to tax any of them to where we put them in compromise.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. Good to see you guys.
Thanks, Coach.